Welcome to the Beyond Barriers podcast. If you're an ambitious woman who wants to advance in leadership, then this podcast is for you. This podcast is co-hosted by Nikki Barua, digital innovator, serial entrepreneur, author, and speaker, and Monica Marquez, senior corporate leader, ex-Googler, and diversity expert. From inspiring stories to cutting-edge strategies, you'll learn how to develop the skill set, mindset, and tool set to get future-ready fast and accelerate your success. Hi, I'm Monica, your host for today's episode. Do you have trouble knowing when to say no or being authentic in your everyday life at work? Many of us spend a significant amount of time devoted to our jobs. And if we aren't honest about ourselves and our situations, we add stress to our already full lives. A rewarding work life involves authenticity, tapping into our passions, and finding the right support. Theresa Ludvigson is the Senior Vice President of People at Qualified, the #1 pipeline generation platform for Salesforce, where Theresa previously held multiple management positions. A natural people person, Theresa is keenly aware of what makes a great manager and loves helping and coaching others. In this episode, she enthusiastically shares stories from her past experiences. She discusses the challenges of learning new skills when switching jobs and the importance of staying true to who you are. You'll love her honesty, optimism, and electrifying energy. Visit iambeyondbarriers.com, where you'll find show notes and links to all the resources in this episode, including the best way to get in touch with Theresa.
Welcome, Theresa. Thank you so much for joining us on the Beyond Barriers podcast. We're thrilled to have you on. Now, you have an extensive background working in corporate for many, many years and now have made a transition to another organization. So would love to share a little bit with our audience who you are, kind of your journey throughout your career, and kind of where did you, how you landed where you are, and what kind of led you down that path. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you to tell us that story.
Oh, thank you so much, Monica. Well, women in leadership has always been a passion of mine. And I go back to my first job out of college. So my very first job, I was a sorority consultant. I don't think people even knew that job existed. I was based out of Tennessee. And every 6 days, I got to go to different college campuses doing leadership presentations and helping these collegiate officers in their respective roles.
Wow.
And I mean, imagine you're 21 years old, you're jet setting all over the United States. It was amazing. I got to see so many cool places, met a lot of great people. But in that period, I was just used to coaching and developing women. Mm-hmm. And so translate that to having sales jobs in the past, to working in leadership development at tech companies. But my passion was really helping others and coaching. Mm-hmm. And, I was at Salesforce for 15 years. I spent the last 6 years there leading global onboarding for the company. So it's onboarding programs and events and communications for all our new hires as well as our acquisitions. And in that role, when you think about onboarding, that is the epitome of helping people, welcoming people to new company. And so I love, of course, I love the company culture. And then to your point, most recently, I've left the company to go to a company called Qualified, which is a Salesforce-backed startup. 9 of our 8 executives are all ex-Salesforce alumni. So it's pretty exciting to be reunited with leaders I really respected when I was at Salesforce, but also just start something new. I feel like you always want to feel like you're learning and growing. And in my new capacity, instead of being a deep subject matter expert in one area of HR, I now lead the entire people experience function at this company. So it's very exciting. It's definitely a change going from an 80,000 person company to a much smaller startup, but I'm learning a lot and I love it.
Fantastic. Now, talking a little bit about that, because that's scary. It's scary to go from somewhere where, after being at an organization for, 14, 15 years, you develop a level of social capital, but also comfort of I could do this job in my sleep, right? Even though there are the days where you get challenged or whatnot, but you kind of know the terrain really, really well. What is it like, or did you have any fears, limiting beliefs? What, things popped up in your mind as you were about to shift from this role to something really, really new where you might have been a subject matter expert, but now you need to be a generalist?
Yeah. So I love that you asked me that question. And I actually take it back to my first sales leader at Salesforce. So his name is Robert Zimmerman. He interviewed me and he was my first regional vice president. Now, Robert is now the chief revenue officer here at Qualified. And I remember like Robert has known me since before I was engaged, before I got married, before my 2 children, before I got divorced. He's known me forever, right?
Yes.
And I remember interviewing for this role. I did have a lot of fear and limiting doubts and beliefs. And I told him in my interview, I'm like, Robert, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I could do all these other things. Like, I don't really understand the ins and outs of payroll or benefits or how to write a COVID policy. Like, I don't know some of this stuff, you know?
Right.
And I had that conversation with him. He's like, but Theresa, think about all the stuff that you do know, you know? And you have this gift to be very welcoming, very exciting. You are passionate about building culture. You're passionate about people. Maximize those. He's like, and you could hire those other people to help you with that other stuff, you know? And it is just so funny that as a woman, we have a tendency to just think like, I can't do that. Maybe I'm not qualified enough for that. And it's just funny. And I look at this qualified sign right behind me. But it was having someone like that, who's a mentor, who's known me for so many years, instill that belief that you can do it, that I just remember getting off that phone call and I said, wow, I am so grateful and so appreciative that I have leaders in my life that are going to lift me up and give me that confidence when I felt like I couldn't do it. And, you know, I have to be honest, you know, you mentioned being so familiar in a certain spot, like Salesforce was my foundation. You know, when I first joined that company, I think I was employee 1,700, left when we were over 80,000. People used to joke and say like, Theresa, you're the mayor of Salesforce. Everywhere you go, people know you. And then I come to this new company where it's a remote first company. I'm joining from my home. I don't really know anybody. And I have all these new challenges, but I definitely have to say that 2 or 3 months into it, I'm finally kind of building that confidence in myself, you know, and it does, and be honest, it doesn't come right away. Like there were definitely a couple of weeks and even months where I was doubting the decision I made. Did I make the right choice? But now I can't even look back. Like I am so energized and excited because I'm learning, you know, and I think that especially as you get more experience in your career, like you don't want to stop learning and stay flat, right? We spend so much time in the workplace, like you want to keep your brain going. And yeah, it's very energizing. It's also incredibly rewarding.
Fantastic. And I can feel your energy, right? And I can feel you have a mindset that's actually very optimistic, which I can appreciate. You mentioned, you know, some of those techniques where I think the important thing is you leveraged, you know, mentor sponsors who were kind of outside looking in, telling you things that maybe we undervalued, like, you know, maybe some competencies, skill sets, things that you weren't seeing as strengths, which was important that your mentor told you, focus on those and lead with those and then hire, you know, others. What were some other techniques in terms of, you know, when you do have the fears and limiting beliefs or that self-doubt pop in your mind, or like maybe the issue that pops up that you're like, oh my God, I've never dealt with this before. What are some techniques that help you get over it faster?
Yeah. I think that you need to kind of set your sights on someone that you really admire in the workplace.
Yes.
Or as a colleague that you've worked with before that you just like, they have a special sparkle. There's something special about them. I love their energy. And ask them, like you have to almost ask them and say, hey, like I admire you and I would really love it if, you know, you can help me be the best person that I could be. Will you help me? Can we do that together? And I remember coming into this role and it was so nice because I had a person like that at this company. And I remember he messaged me, he's like, hey, like I've got your back, you know, I'm going to be your buddy in all of this and you're going to go through change. I did too, but know that I'm always there for you. And I love feeling that level of support from somebody, but it's also a good reminder for all of us is that there's going to be someone else in that room who thinks that of me, right? Or thinks that of any of the listeners here. And so sometimes you need to be the one to reach out and give people that permission to say, hey, I'm here for you. If you need me, I want to support you and help you. Because a lot of times people are afraid to ask. And so it's our responsibility as we move up into levels of leadership to be that platform, to be that extra additional level of support for other people, right? Just kind of pay it forward.
Yes. That's so important that you said that like, creating that safe space and kind of opening that door for people to come to you and be able to ask you of, you know, for help or whatever that might be. So tell me a little bit about, you know, because some people, they hear that and they say, okay, yes, they have the open door. They've told me to ask, but I don't even know what to ask for. Like, so when you reach out and you're tapping individuals to ask for help, how do you break that down? How do you, what is the ask, or how do you even approach them?
So you're asking, how do I approach people when I need support or help?
Yes.
I get, okay, great question. So I feel like everyone has incredible potential, and sometimes it's untapped potential, right? Mm-hmm. And so I never want to stay stagnant. I always think like, what can I do more? How can I impact more people? How could I help more people? How could I even elevate my own career and my own brand? Mm-hmm. And so I have to get very specific when I ask people for help, because a lot of times, you want more, but you don't really have the tools to convey exactly what you want. So coaching that I give to people on my team, and also I'm like running a program here at Qualified, but talking about having that individual development plan, right? Building on IDP to say, here's what my strengths are. Here are like 3 things I could probably use more help with. Here's where I want to go. Here's a retrospective, what I thought I did well last year. You almost have to write all that down, almost journaling it, right, but for your own self and career. And then I'm not going to throw all these things onto like my mentor or coach, but I can actually say, hey, very specifically, here's an area of growth for me. Could you help me with this specific thing? And it makes it much easier for that person to support you. Yes. And then you also have a framework to ask for what you want. Because I remember in my early management phases, sitting with people on my team, and, you could see someone who felt like they needed more, but they didn't really know how to convey it. And so as leaders, we're not mind readers, but we have definitely care about the individual and want to help them. So you just, as the asker, you will need to be really specific of what you want. And as a leader, one thing that I used to do, and I still have it on my whiteboard at home, I have very boldly written, and, in caps, how can I support you? ? Because I think that, especially in this tech environment or the corporate space, we work so quickly. And sometimes you get into those one-on-one meetings, you're like, business, let's do this, knock it off. And then you actually don't really build that rapport and actually serve as a leader or a coach to your team members. Mm-hmm. And so when I have that really big and bold written out, it makes me remember, because my intention is there, but sometimes moving so fast, like remember, say, hey, how can I support you? And just asking that question opens up that door and allows that individual to open up to you and share how you can best help them.
That's so insightful. And I think very tangible in terms of getting specific. But I love what you said about the need to journal or put pen to paper. I mean, here at Beyond Barriers, we take people through the programs and helping them gain clarity and the confidence. But we always tell them you have to put pen to paper so that you can really, because they seem like very innocuous questions, right? Like, what are your strengths? What are your passions? What do you love to do? And we're like, oh, that's a simple question. But when you really sit down to answer that for yourself, it's kind of like, whoa, like, it's overwhelming. So I love that you were talking about really journaling that, and even going retrospectively, thinking backwards, like, what have I accomplished? What have I done? And kind of using that as a jumpstart.
Yeah. And I think, I wanted to kind of double click on what you said around passion, because when you find your passion and that's what you do, the sky's the limit. Like, you just end up crushing things like big time, right?
Yes.
And I remember, I had many roles at Salesforce, because I talk about Salesforce because I was there for so long. Mm-hmm. But it was the moment that I actually tapped into my passions, which was like around being creative, welcoming people, high energy, bring the vibe, bring all that pizzazz. Once I found that in my job, like, I had to pitch myself every morning, like, is this really my job? Like, how is it so fun? How am I completely in the zone? And I came into that role with 3 people on my team and grew it to 40 people. And it was amazing. But it was because you're attached to your passion and just seems like it's just effortless for you, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes I give coaching to other employees where I feel like, if they're underperforming, it doesn't have to do that they're a bad employee. It's just like, you need to find what is your strength, where are you in the zone? And then you just look behind you, just like, you can't believe how much growth you're having and how much impact you're having.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. And that is so, so true.
What if you could pinpoint the invisible ceilings limiting your success? Imagine having clarity on your strengths and barriers so you can take action and gain unstoppable momentum to advance as a future-ready leader. Well, that's exactly what the Beyond Barriers quiz will help you discover. You'll get your personalized score based on the 25 essential elements proven to accelerate success in the digital age, so you can understand what's holding you back and where to focus your efforts. The Beyond Barriers quiz is completely free and takes just a few minutes. Go to iambeyondbarriers.com/quiz and take the quiz today.
I want to shift gears a little bit because, as you mentioned, you went from a role where you might have had a little bit more kind of subject matter expertise, and now you're kind of, you're heading up like all the people processes, and really wanting to understand how do you kind of learn or research, or how do you stay on top or stay ahead of the curve so that you're able to lead others, right? Because at the end of the day, sometimes you don't know what you don't know, but you have a team of people who you're working with, but there's lots of things coming at you. So how do you shift from that subject matter expert to kind of like more of the generalist, but how do you stay ahead of the curve? How do you learn? What are some of the habits or techniques that you use?
Well, I think a couple of words come to mind. So one, it's about like celebrating, recognizing, and also staying humble in your state. So I have a woman on my team named Catherine, and she is HR generalist, knows all the things, compensation, tax filing, benefits, leave of absences, all of this stuff, right? And I have such a profound respect for her that she knows all of these things that I don't have experience in, right? And so when she's on my team, I celebrate her, I recognize her regularly, and let her know how critical she is to the growth and success of the team, and how I am so dependent on her for us to grow and create this really amazing people organization.
Right.
And so it's when you kind of set that tone and you're like, hey, I'm going to link arms with you because without you, I'm not as strong. Right. And so when employees feel appreciated like that, especially another woman employee, like that just boosts the overall morale of the team. And that's kind of how I continue to learn, is not thinking that I know the most in the room, but it's recognizing what everyone's strengths are in that virtual room or around that table and celebrating them, and also letting them know that they're at that table because they have something really incredible to offer.
I love that. It made me think of like when you're playing poker and you have that winning hand, but you need like every single card in order to be able to throw it down on the table and win, the game. So you look at each of your individuals as like, what is their value card, right? What value card do they play, and leverage that. The other important thing I think that you said is that, which was really profound. You didn't say it, but you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. And you really embrace everybody else's, strengths, and you bring it together as a team. And I think that's really important because women tend to almost sometimes burn the candle at both ends because they feel like they have to do everything themselves. What advice or what would you say on that comment when you think of women who sometimes don't ask for help because they feel like they have to do it all themselves?
Yeah. So it makes me think of a couple things. One, I have a mug, I wish I had on me right now, that says "We rise by lifting others." So that's always a good reminder of, how you elevate yourself is by elevating those around you. So that's number one. But number two, and just not burning the candle on both ends, is being able to know your no. And I actually heard Robin Arzon say this, who's one of the Peloton instructor. It's like knowing your no. It's okay to say no sometimes. And I think one of the things I had, and it just makes me like kind of PTSD think about the stress level of it, is that I have 2 kids, right? I'm a single mom. I got to take them to school. I got to take them to soccer practice, get them to T-ball, drop-offs, pickups, different times, different schedules. I remember at one point, I used to think like, okay, there's a conference call that's happening right now. Let me put it on my phone, put it on the Bluetooth in my car, get my kids, get their lunch, get them. And I wasn't very present for the call. I wasn't really present with my children. And I was burning myself out thinking that I could do it all. And the most amazing thing is when I just frankly said, hey, I can't make these calls because I have to drop off my children. What do you think the response was on the other line? Okay, no problem. We'll record it for you. Listen to it later. We'll send you the notes.
Wow.
But it's just about saying like, hey, I can't do this, But I think for a lot of times women always want to say yes, that we can do it all. And it's just leads to incredible burnout. You're not as effective as you could be as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just about kind of knowing my no and saying, hey, if you want the best of me, the best of me is not going to be between 8 and 8:45 Monday through Friday,
Right. I think it's so important. The power of transparency, like you said, of just putting it out there and say, I can't do that at this time. And, most of the time you're pleasantly surprised that people are like, okay, let's accommodate. Right. But we tend to there's that fear of like, if I tell them that I can't do it, or, that somehow it's going to, you're at the end of the day, it's like, what's the worst case that could happen? But in our minds, we play these things of like, oh my God, like then I can't do the job or whatever it may be. So I think it's so important that you lead by example. And I think even you just sharing that story or just sharing that example on the podcast gives other women permission to say, you know what, I should be able to kind of set that boundary or be that transparent and share that with, key stakeholders or leadership or whatever it may be, so that I can actually be able to focus and integrate work and life.
And thing is, leading by example is so important, because you also think about the women who are in your organization that they want to be able to see that representation, right? They want to see that, hey, here's a senior leader, and it's okay that she has to take her son to soccer. She can still be a good leader and still be a good mom. And I think that like leading of transparency is so key, and authenticity. So in my Google Calendar, everything is public. So nothing is blocked off in like a shaded area of no title, right? It'll say Maze's soccer practice, Jones's t-ball, Maze's drop off. I have therapy every 2 weeks on a Friday. It's blocked out. It says therapy, because I also think that mental health and well-being is really important.
Yes.
And I don't want people to feel like they can't do that, or that makes them not normal. So anybody at this company, they could go to my calendar and be like, oh, Theresa has therapy at 1:00 on Fridays. But that gives people permission to do those things that will help you bring your whole self to work as well.
I think that is fantastic. And I mean, I think every leader should do that. In terms of it normalizes things. And so, just kind of like springboarding on that, just thinking about how do you keep yourself sane? So let's describe a typical day and how you ensure like effective execution, but then also making sure that you're integrating work and life, because we don't believe in the whole work-life balance. We blow that out of the water. We demystify that here at Beyond Barriers, but we talk about integrating work and life. And it sounds like you're doing a lot of that.
So there's no way for me to do that work-life integration, especially when you're working from home most of the time.
Right.
And so it's kind of funny, this thing. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's a secret to my success, but it's actually the secret to me actually unplugging a little bit during the workday. Because I'll be honest, I'm eating lunch at my desk. My kitchen's right there. I make my food. I sit down. I continue to work. But what I started doing is actually, I think I got targeted on an Instagram ad for a sauna blanket. So I bought this sauna blanket. It's like a sleeping bag. It's upstairs in my fitness room. So I will leave my computer for about 20 minutes and I go lay in the sauna blanket. I'll listen to a guided meditation, and the blanket really warms you up. And everyone likes to be cozy and warm, right? But it's because it's an action where it's a physical action, me leaving my desk, getting into a heated up blanket, listening to meditation. Sometimes I'll do the LED face mask too. I want to like help with get spots or sunspots or wrinkles. But I'm very plugged in at this point. It's like this 20 minutes of laying that just lets me kind of recharge. And sometimes I can squeeze a little nap in that 20 minutes, sometimes not. But then I come out of it refreshed, knowing that I did a little something for me. It's a little bit of quiet time. And I could go back to my desk, get back on those calls, get back on those Google slides, But that's one thing that I think is important, to just take that little bit of time for yourself, just to like break up the monotony of always being on.
That is so important, and I'm gonna have to look up this sauna blanket.
And apparently, if you can sit in it for 30 minutes, it's supposed to burn like 600 calories. I don't know if that's true or not, but if I can burn calories laying down in a blanket with my eyes closed, I think that's pretty cool.
I'm right there with you. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. So I wanted to share, I wanted to ask a little bit, because it sounds like you've had a lot of wonderful kind of sponsors and mentors throughout your career. But I also picked up that a lot of them were male. And I want you to talk about that a little bit, because I think it's so important on making sure that, you are tapping your community and you're finding mentors and sponsors, but you aren't allowing the idea that because that person doesn't look like you, that they can't really help you accelerate in your success. And we get that a lot from women, where they feel like, well, there aren't a lot of women that I can reach out to who I can look up to. But at the end of the day, that's an upward battle, because there aren't as many women out there in those roles. So how did you gain access to influential people, and how did you cultivate those relationships with people, even when they were individuals who didn't look like you?
Yeah. I feel like you get mentorship, like, sex aside, it doesn't matter if it's a male or female, it's whoever wants to help you or whoever you respect. And, I think that when I think about some of the male leaders, I think that sometimes they might, it's just very like their dads, right? Their fathers, they might have growing daughters, like growing up, and they're probably thinking like, if my daughter is going to go through this own journey, how can I help somebody else who's kind of already there? Right. And how could, like, if they're mentoring me, coaching me, that gives them more context to when they want to support their own children, their own daughters going through the career. So I think that's one thing. I also have had very amazing women leaders, in my time too. One story that I always remember very, very fondly is one of my executive vice presidents when I was at Salesforce. I was on maternity leave, and I had just given birth to my second son. And I was 6 days out of the hospital, and she texts me saying she wants to visit me and the baby. And I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like, do I really want to have my boss visit me after I just delivered a child? But okay. And I remember just like on my phone, I'm like, oh, you live so far. Are you sure? Okay. So she comes over, she brings lunch for me and the baby. She's holding my baby in the kitchen. I'm like, wow, this is next level leadership, right? This is like dedication to your team member. Well, right before she leaves, she gives me a gift bag. And in the gift bag was a baby onesie. And it read, my mom just got promoted.
Oh my goodness.
She literally promoted me via hand-delivered customized onesie while I was on maternity leave. And that was such an incredible leadership moment, such a moment to really bring incredible employee loyalty to an organization as well. Yes. And so that was very defining for me, thinking like, okay, in my career, how many times can I create those moments that matter with people on my team or just people in the organization where you just surprise people out of the blue to make it not just a business, but it's actually about putting the people first.
I love that. That's such an amazing example. And I've heard many of those, especially, through some of the programs and the cohorts that we've had, even in Salesforce. And I think that's an amazing culture and example. I want to shift a little bit and start, and ask you, at the beginning of your career, did you ever imagine that you would have, had a leadership role in the profession or the organization or the industry that you were? You talked about gaining some of that clarity and identifying your passions, but when were those aha moments, or how did you do that? Did you have to like really sit down and figure that out, or did you have just like moment of an epiphany of some sorts? Because I think a lot of people struggle with that, of how do you identify that clarity and, so that you land where you want to be?
Well, the clarity comes with really knowing who you are and staying true to who you are. And I remember and actually another mentor of mine is probably my ex-husband. So him and I are good friends. He works at Cisco for many years, and he kind of was always a little bit ahead of me on the leadership curve. Like he always got promoted a little bit before me. I remember asking him once, I'm like, Eric, do you think I should be a little bit more serious as I try to pursue my, executive career aspirations? And it's so easy. We talk about the way that guys think about stuff, whereas women be like, doubt, how do we need to respond, or how do we need to act? What should my decorum be like as an executive? And I remember Eric said to me, he's like, Theresa, he's like, everyone at the top, like they're all the same. It's not very fun. He's like, be you. You're fun and you're silly. You can still do what you want to do. He's like, it's refreshing for people to see. Right. And so I'm so glad that I had that conversation with him maybe like 8 years ago. But then from that moment, I'm like, I will stay true to myself. And I might be a little bit goofy. I might wear a sparkly pink leather jacket to the office, but I don't care, because that is my brand and it brings life and energy. And that is my differentiator, And so knowing who you are and staying true to it, it's just like, I just couldn't imagine like going through life and work not being who I am. and feeling like a fake, even, when people talk about the whole imposter syndrome thing, just like if you don't understand or know something, just ask and be very honest of what you do and what you don't know, because most likely people are out there to help you. They want to see you succeed. They didn't hire you because they wanted you to fail. But if you don't make yourself heard and you don't express what you don't know, then they will never know how to help you. And I think that's a lot of women probably do that, where they have that imposter syndrome and they try to fake that they know what they're talking about.
Yes.
But the minute that they're honest with themselves and say, hey, can you help me with this? They hired you because they want you. Of course they're going to help you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a big one. Be yourself and just be honest of what you need.
Oh my goodness. Yes. That, what you said is so, it's so eye-opening in terms of how powerful authenticity can be and how it can really unlock, your potential and who you are. And I think that's so important. And you mentioned how your authenticity, or just you being, you being you, the energetic kind of, like you said, you're just being yourself. That's your brand, your reputation. Right. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of it, right? Because you do need to develop that brand, but then there's the visibility of making sure that others are aware of what is your unique value proposition and, where is it that you want to go? Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, you had that profound conversation. You're like, this is my brand. This is who I am. But how do you self-promote without feeling or without kind of crossing that line?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, aligning it to your strengths. I look at myself as a connector, and, I did that a lot when I was at Salesforce, where if I knew somebody that needs support with something else, I'm like, oh, you should talk to X. And just by doing a lot of that connection, I built this brand very naturally, but the intention was never to make myself a bigger name. It was more because I want to help others, right? If that is something that's one of your values, is helping others, and you just do that and carry through that value naturally, your brand comes with it. I also had a leader once tell me, and this is such great advice, he said, I want to be that leader that when someone sees my name on the calendar invite, they don't groan like, oh God,
Yes.
Like, I want to be that person when they see Theresa Ludvigson on the calendar invite, they're like, sweet, that's going to be so fun. That means going to fly by. We're probably going to have some good laughs along the way. Right. That is what I want to, be my brand at a company. And so when I heard that, I'm like, okay, that's my motivation. How do I bring a little bit of more joy, sparkle, and sunlight to people's days? And I remember before I came to this company, I listened to a company all hands call where our CEO was kind of making an announcement that was coming to the company. And he said something that was so awesome. And I hadn't worked with him for over 10 years. And our CEO goes, you guys, when you meet Theresa, she's just electric. She's so fun. She's just electric. And that's a pretty cool word to be associated to as well, right? But you build that brand, you get those words said about you because you're not acting, you're not pretending to be someone you're not. Right. I'm not more serious because now I'm the head of people. Sometimes I probably do need to be more serious, but overall, I'm having a good time. And that's
Fantastic. Oh my God. I love that, which is a great segue because you talked about, someone calling you electric. I want to jump into the lightning round questions, which I think will be so fun because we'll learn a little bit more about you, which, I think is fantastic. It goes along with it. But what book greatly influenced you?
The book that greatly influenced me is probably Anne of Green Gables. Because Anne Shirley is this little orphan, right? She gets adopted by a farmers. And she has this bright red hair. She's super different than the rest of the kids growing up, but she stays true to herself. She's a really good student. She's witty. She's smart, ends up getting the most handsome guy in school because she's who she is. And I remember just always thinking wow, she's so bold. And I just really admire that, but she also has a really big heart. And so I think that's probably a book that really influenced me, just that character.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Next, what is your favorite inspiring quote or saying?
Yes. Inspiring quote. I might butcher this a little bit, but it's from Oprah Winfrey. And it's something along the lines of surround yourself with people who will only lift you higher. And I think that has been a big motto. And so it's kind of those two phrases come hand in hand. Like I told you earlier about the one with my coffee mug, right? We rise by lifting others. But then the other quote that I am inspired by, it's my favorite quote by Oprah, is surround yourself with people who lift you higher. And I do think that one of the great treasures I have is I actually am part of a women's leadership cohort. We have about 8 of us. We're all in different organizations, different industries, different companies. And we meet once a month. And it's just so nice. It's like group therapy, but it's like on the same level of like, we're dealing with very similar challenges in different industries. And just being heard and being seen is just so nice with your peer group. So those women, and if they listen to this, they'll know I'm talking about them. But they definitely lift me higher.
Oh, I love that. What is one word or moniker you would use to describe yourself?
This is kind of embarrassing, but I would maybe say so glam.
So glam. I love it.
And I remember, gosh, I was so extra growing up. Maybe I'm still probably a little extra, but I had a license plate. My actual personalized plate said so glam. Okay.
Oh, I love it. I
remember getting pulled over for speeding, and the police officer like pulls me over. He's like, "So, ma'am, how are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm not feeling so glam right now." And he gave me a warning. Again, be true to yourself. You never know.
Moniker works. That's right. I love it. The so glamorous. And it may, you know what? You talked about your bright, shimmery pink blazer. It all makes sense now.
Yeah.
What is one change, a habit, behavior, or action that you implemented that made your life better?
I mean, see, this is kind of funny, but I won't say made my life better, but it helps to fuel my peppiness. Okay. So this is not an ad. This is not a paid advertisement. So I've got this form of caffeine. So that's a poppin' bottle vanilla oat milk latte. I've got a Red Bull sugar free. And then I've got a Diet Dr. Pepper.
Oh, wow.
All sitting next to my desk. And I don't know. It just keeps to fuel my energy. And
there we go.
Make the day go by.
The Energizer Bunny. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Now, here's one of my last and favorite one. What power song would you want playing as you walked onto a stage?
So it's probably Gwen Stefani's Holla Back Girl. And I don't know if you're hearing that in your head right now, but it's a great beat.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, just like, marching band music.
That's right.
Bad word in
You're going to walk on the stage and just own it.
It's like, let's go, girl. Ain't no holla back, girl. You know, it's good.
I love it. Theresa, this has been a phenomenal interview, and I'm sure the energy is just going to radiate through everybody's iPhones, phones, whatever, headphones that they're listening on. And we always get this. Someone is probably going to want to follow and be inspired and just hear all of the Theresa-isms that come out, whether they're on LinkedIn or just, want to get to know you. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Definitely LinkedIn. I'm usually on LinkedIn every day. So that's probably the best. So Theresa Ludvigson or T Ludvigson is my alias.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you again for giving us this time and, us getting to know you. And I will tell you, it's close to the end of the afternoon when we're recording this, and I feel so totally energized. I can just go on now till like midnight. Thank you.
Amazing. Good. It is late for you. So yes, thank you so much, Monica, for your time. It's really been a pleasure.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond Barriers podcast. There are thousands of podcasts out there, and we are so grateful that you've chosen to listen to ours. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and tell a friend about it. And subscribe to get new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Visit IamBeyondBarriers.com, where you'll find show notes, links, and the best way to connect with our guests. See you next episode.